For episode 8, part 3 picks up where part 2 leaves off. When we last left Kimber, things don't look so good for her because thanks to Roxy, now there are a bunch of explosions everywhere, so now it's up to Jeff to save her. Since he refused to let Jerica save her, so it's now up to Jeff. Well, good thing they managed to get off the hill and intact on the bike that Jeff has. So now that Kimber's safe and sound, thanks to Jeff, he tells Jerica that Kimber must be taken to the nurse where she be treated. Luckily for him and Kimber, they managed to pass Nick by, and so did Asha, who told Nick later that no thanks to him that Jeff has saved Kimber. Since Jerica now knew who was responsible, she goes around the back to change into Jim. So when Jim shows up, she and the girls decided to confront with Eric. Roxy tries to walk away, but Pizzazz says, "Wait a minute, there's no way that the holograms has any proof of it." So when Jim walks up to Roxy to ask if she has anything to do with it, but Roxy tries to frankly deny it. So Jim decided to hold Eric accountable, but then in turn, Eric tries to turn on Harry and said that he was the one that did it. But Harry tells Eric and the rest of the crew that Clash is the one who did it, but Clash had nothing to do with it, so she too tries to deny it. That was the last straw for Jim, and she told Eric that she may have be able to risk her life, but not her friends' lives. So she decides to quit on the spot, but this time for good. But she's not alone. Asha and Shayna went along with her, and then after they left, it's now Rio's turn to settle the score with Eric. So after Rio was told to leave by Eric after he told him that you're lucky that Jim got you off the hook, so then it's Miguel's turn to leave. So after Miguel left, the other two men left too. Then after the two men left, it's now the two women's turn to leave. Right after Georgia told them that they're making a mistake, but the women left anyway. So when Pizzazz shows up, she made a suggestion with her to say, "What if we can start the movie over, write a new script, and start over by scratch?" And of course, Eric agrees with Pizzazz and then said it'll double the movie's project that way. So he seems to be delighted with Pizzazz's suggestion. Back at the nurse's office with Kimber and Jeff, that's when the nurse told Kimber that she'll be alright. She can take it easy for a few days. And that's when Jeff and Kimber had a pleasant conversation with each other. And then, long story short, they hooked up. As you may have guessed it, Kimber and Jeff fall in love with each other. Meanwhile, at Starlight Mansion, Jericho was busy reading the book to Ba-nee. After that, Asha just lets Jericho know that everybody's in the living room for a meeting. So after Bonnie was tucked in by Jerica, she steps out of the hallway to meet up with her. And that's when Jerica told Asha that Bonnie trusts Jim and there's no way she's going to let her down. So after Jerica changed into Jim, she meets up with everybody else for a meeting, including Shayna, Anthony, Rio, Video, Countess Devonson, Patricia, Howard, and said to everyone that there's no way that this movie's going down without a fight, not that she has anything to do about it. That's when Video came up with a suggestion to say, "We don't need a studio anyway," and suggested to make a music video for a film. Even Sheena suggested it, and Anthony agrees with Sheena's idea. And of course, Miguel and Rio have both agreed to work for free, while Countess Devonson agrees to make some costumes. So after the putting it all together by the Holograms song, it's now December 15th of 1985, and that's when Video's cousin Clash shows up to ask a question if it was true that Jim is doing the movie inside. Video not only tells Clash that it's true, but she also said that she has a message for her to relay to the Misfits back at the studio. So meanwhile, there Clash relayed that message to the Misfits from her cousin Video to insult them. Well, Pizzazz is not exactly happy about it, and that's when Stormer of the Misfits came up with a suggestion that they need someone who could find out what's going on in the mansion, someone who could go in undercover. So that's when Clash suggested that she should go undercover. And what better way to do a job with that is with Georgia, the makeup artist. Meanwhile, Jim's best friend Lindsay Pierce just has an interview with first of all Howard, then Rio, then lastly Jim, who told Lindsay the good news that once the movie's finished, it'll be donated to the Starlight charity. Back at the studio, Eric got upset with Possess for ordering too many animals, so she told him that she'll do whatever she wants. So after the Misfits song of Welcome to the Jungle, that's when Possess jumped into Nick's arms after he saved her from the lion, but then making a move on her, and getting possessed all it just made her upset, and she shoved Nick into the water. Then after that incident, that's when Nick left. Back at Starlight Mansion, Patricia lets in a mysterious woman, but little didn't she nor everybody else know that she was really Clash in disguise. While doing that, Clash stole everything that comes across equipment, some ropes, some clothes, and she puts them in the back of her car that's parked outside. Back at the studio, Pizzazz got upset with Georgia, the makeup artist, for doing her makeup all wrong. So she tried to fix it with Georgia's makeup kit, but Georgia refused, and then she left suddenly after that. Next, Pizzazz got upset with the wardrobe artist for having the clothes be built all wrong. So after tearing up her designs and asked her to do it over, that's when she left. As the final insult, Pizzazz got upset with the scriptwriter for the set being too awful. After that final insult, that's when the scriptwriter got fed up with it, and then after that, he left. Back at Starlight Mansion, Video has a plan to make with Jeff to use the videotape evidence that Clash in disguise, who's also there that she was not aware of, that she was supposed to be erasing, puts it in Video's bag so that it could be used for later so they can use it to get Eric into trouble. Before that could happen, Georgia shows up later to apologize to Jim for bad-mouthing her earlier, and she shouldn't have done it. Jim not only forgives Georgia, but she allows her to help. That's when they didn't realize is that Clash in Disguise just took Video's bag with the videotaped evidence. When Jim saw what had happened, there was no time to waste, so she and the girls headed to the Rock and Roaster and started chasing after Clash while Rio does the rest in his pickup truck. And that's when both cars surround Clash in her car, and now with Clash having no place else to go, that's when she ran off, leaving her car and the stolen stuff behind. Well, good news. Everybody's got their stolen stuff back, including the videotaped evidence. When back with Clash, she came back to the studio while the Misfits are performing. She told them the bad news. When Pizzazz heard about it, she smashes her guitar in a rage. Back at Starlight Mansion, Jim's movie was almost finished at that time with Rio. But that was until Nick shows up and tries to persuade Jim. At first, Kimber tries to reject him. And that's when both of the men are having an argument, but then Jim tries to break it up by saying to Rio, "Hey, cheer up. I'm sure there's a spot for Nick." But then Nick has decided that he refused to work for free, and so after that, Nick left. Back in the studio, that's when Eric was approached by the Union Guilds people by charging him with a bunch of charges like sabotage, filming without permission, and everything else. When Possess shows up and sees it happen, that's when she got upset, and then after that, she decides to leave. Back at the mansion, Starlight Mansion that is, after the People Who Care video, that's when Jim's movie is finally finished. Back at the studio, now that the Misfits movie was finished, there was a party. That was until Harvey and Howard crashed it. And that's when they told Eric the bad news. He said that now, thanks to him, the movie was millions over budget. And what's worst of all, there was a lot of bills and fines. And that's when Harvey was face to face with his daughter, telling him that indulging her was a big mistake. And on top of that, he decided, Harvey that is, to give the studio to Howard. However, Pizzazz was very shocked and dismayed. So, December 16th of 1985, the very next morning, when Ba-nee went to see the optometrist again, and this time with Jerrica, that's when the optometrist told her that Ba-nee's surgery will be done. But he's not even sure if the surgery was successful or not. So when Jerrica gave him the deed of trust for the Starlight Mansion, she assured him that if the surgery is a success, then the movie's profits will help cover the costs. But he'll assure Jerrica that he'll let her know if the news was good and that the surgery would be successful. So later that evening, when the movie premiere came, there are two movies playing at the same night. We have the Jim's movie on the left, and we have the Misfits movie on the right. And that's when, at the window upstairs, that's when the Misfits showed up at their movie premiere. The fans will be glad to get the Misfits holographs a little bit later, as the holograms were watching them. And so both movies played the way it's planned. That was until the Misfits fans got disgusted and left the theater. At the same time, the Jim's movie line fans had liked the movie so much that they watched it again and again. And when the Mistress fans saw what had happened, they ran to the movie where Jim's movie was playing on the left hand side instead. The holograms who saw everything from upstairs saw what the Mistress fans did. Jim's movie line got bigger and bigger as the Mistress movie line got smaller and smaller, and they were cheered with joy. Now that the Jim's movie premiere was over, there's good news. Howard Sam just gave them the movie profits of $250,000 to Jerica and her friends. Back with Ba-nee, now that her surgery is done, she can see everything else again. So thanks to Jim, Ba-nee gets her vision back, and that ends episode 8.